We're off and running, we're good to go.
Okay, do we need to start over?
No, just continue on, just continue.
Okay.
So we get the roll call done, and I guess public comment.
Yep, we can start there, okay. So if we have any public that wants to ask us anything, make a statement, come up to the podium or not, that's okay too. Nobody? Okay, and we don't have any board member comment then in response. Then next up is the consent agenda. Tonight, that consists of approval of the regular meeting minutes of June 4th of 2019, work session minutes of June 5th, work session minutes of May 25th, with attachment from trustee Wiegand, bills payable in the amount of $155,734.78. Reports tonight received, roads approved minutes of May 7th, sheriff's report of May of 2019, fire department activity report from May, recreation committee agenda for June 18th, and poster for cleanup and barbecue for June 22nd, and the financials from May. Anything that needs to be pulled out of there?
I'll move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Any conflicts of interest we need to declare? I haven't heard of any. We have just one presentation tonight, so we're going to, I need to amend the agenda before we approve it to take Mike's presentation off. Dave.
I don't see where we've put on the discussion of the marijuana issue we were going to, from the work session. Do we need to add that?
I don't think we have enough answers from Roger yet. Or do you mean just to talk about it?
No, I thought we were going to make some direction to the planning commission. Or are we waiting for?
As far as ordinances you're talking, for them to start working on it.
That was a decision on the work session anyway.
He's making a face too, so he didn't get that either. I don't know if we want to add something tonight. I don't like adding it the last minute.
Well, it's only going to be, I guess the topic of discussion was at the work session, we basically through consensus, which we can't make any motions there.
Right.
Are going to direct the planning commission to start moving on it. But we do, Dave is correct, we do need a board motion to formalize that. So if he would like to add that, that's probably fine. It's because it's really going to be, it's not going to be a big issue, yeah.
Okay, then.
So you want to add that, Dave?
Yeah, I would think about 9G would be appropriate.
Support.
Okay, 9G.
Okay.
And then we'll move the 9F to 9A.
Yep. I had him in B, but I didn't know if Jason was coming too.
And then we can just move everything down.
So we don't need Jason here for the second reading. I had that question on here.
Yeah, he's not going to be here for the second reading.
Okay. So that becomes B, the fire and rescue is C, and all the way down.
So marijuana will actually be 9F then. That's okay. Or, yeah.
No, it'd still be G, because we're not taking
Okay.
any out.
Okay.
Okay. That's the only thing I needed to change to. Thanks, Dave, for that. And Pete. So we need a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Motion and support, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay. So we don't have, like I said, National Trails Day. Mike's gonna try to do that another time. He's under the weather. But we do have a presentation from the Marquette County Solid Waste Management Authority, either Brad and Randy, or one or either or both. It's totally fine if you want to come up to the mic. At least introduce yourself so we have it for the record. We know who you are.
All right. Oh, let's see here. Good evening. Brad Austin, Director, Marquette County Solid Waste. Tonight we have the board chairman here, Randy Yell. Also have the Director of Finance here, Chris Magnuson's in the front row. In the second row, Mr. Josh Wales, who is the landfill supervisor. So if you have any questions between the four of us, I think we'll be able to help you out. I want to thank you guys first for having us. I know there's been some conflicts over the past few months trying to get here, different meetings, things that had come up, but very excited to be here and present the most recent information regarding the proposed county recycling program. So, maybe.
Is it on?
There we
There
go.
we go.
Okay, let's start with the agenda. I want to talk a little bit tonight about the current county recycling program, the proposed program and associated project. How did we get to this point regarding recycling? Some of the authority actions to include a TV6 survey and a feasibility study. Current proposed recycling equipment and a glass option. Project goals and a regional approach, the status of the project right now, project funding, and the business case, and then we'll wrap this up with a summary. A little bit about the current program that we have right now. Currently, Marquette Township, I believe, has service from North Country Disposal for their solid waste and recycling. Been participating in the dual recycling program for quite a few years. This program at the authority level commenced in 2012. Residential material, 1,500 tons per year. Alternating weeks, fiber and rigid collection, curbside collection, and drop-off sites are a part of this program. There's authority municipality agreements. It is a mixed commodities program, which means it's a low market return. We're currently mixing cardboard and mixed paper together. It has a very low return at the market. Same for rigid plastics. Low level or leveled off participation, about 1,500 tons per year. That's been steady now for about the last 2 years. No commercial material processing capacity, which is important to note here. Our program is dual stream recycling only on the residential side. We do not process commercial material. Proposed program and project, we would like to convert the county from dual to single stream recycling, meaning putting all recyclables into one single bin, minus glass, and we'll get more into that when we talk about the glass option. We'd also like to implement a regional recycling facility. How do we get here? A couple years ago, we started an internal evaluation recycling program, and what we found was a lot of recyclables in the landfill. We start to look at that issue and say, how's that affecting the long-term life of the facility, and also we're failing to capture value of commodities that we're currently putting in the landfill. There's 2 recycling programs in the county. There's commercial single stream and there's residential dual stream, and it is a very inconsistent outreach and education message that we have right now with our K through 5 students who we bring in for tours and we educate. We're talking about dual stream at home, and then it's commercial single stream at the business or at the school. It's a mixed commodities market, as I said, low returns, contaminants impacting commodity qualities such as glass and others. There's an inability to process single stream, the business and commercial fraction of material. And the public feedback has been, we're confused, and we would like a more convenient option regarding curbside recycling. Some of my observations and the decision-making process here in regards to this project, I'd like to talk a little bit about that also. For me, it really started here, and I know back in May of 2018, we had a presentation over here with all the constituent municipalities. This is kind of where we started, which was what's happening in our landfill, and this is a pretty common occurrence at Marquette County Solid Waste. We see a lot of fiber, cardboard being placed into the landfill, and probably most likely here you're seeing a commercial product, meaning recyclables have been collected commercially within the county, but because the market is not doing so well, the best cost option is to landfill it. And this is something that we see quite a bit of. Same with plastics. This is high-density polyethylene number 2 milk jugs, which is probably worth about currently 19 to 22 cents a pound at the Chicago High-Side Market. We're seeing a lot of these materials in the landfill. So it's an issue, and it's something that has been a concern of ours for the past couple of years. We took some action last year. In April 2018, we did a TV6 survey. We surveyed 203 county residents. 80% supported the one-bin system, which wasn't a surprise to us. 74% were more likely to participate in the program with a one-bin system. And 55% supported millage tax increase. That would increase recycling participation, landfill diversion, and improve the system. We also did a feasibility study. We hired a consultant, I believe in July of 18, Resource Recycling Systems out of Ann Arbor, J.D. Lindbergh. The president has been kind of leading the charge and working with us together for the past 8 months. Their conclusion was that we needed to process single-stream recycling to attract tons. So essentially what that means is that we changed the program not only to attract tons within the county, but outside the county. Upgrade to paper processing, separate OCC, or old corrugated containers, cardboard from mixed paper, recognize preservation of landfill space will pay future benefits. I think it's one of the points in this process that's gotten lost. It's been all about upfront and what it costs, and I don't think we're paying enough attention to what the value is of extending the life of the facility, because at some point it will close and fill. And the question is, where are we going to put solid waste in Marquette County as we move forward? We need to aggressively promote that new recycling program, which we have been doing for the last about 18 months when we started really pushing the single stream idea. And then we need to determine economic feasibility from the financing standpoint, which has been going on since January of 2019. That was post the meeting we had when we discussed the feasibility study results. So the current recycling equipment that we have and some of the proposed equipment, this is what we have on site right now. This is a dual stream unit. This is how your residential recycling gets processed right now. We built this unit back in 2016. It's really been kind of a Band-Aid to the bigger goal, which is to move the county to single stream. As I said earlier, you're seeing a mixed commodity. So on the left, you've got that cardboard and mixed paper mixed together. And then you've got that mixed rigid product on the right-hand side, which is all of those different plastic resins mixed together. That's what we're currently baling and sending to market, both of those different commodities. This is where we'd like to go. This is a single stream MRF, or material recovery facility. What we've done over the past 8 months is we have found a way to put this piece of equipment in an existing structure on site. So we would remove the dual stream equipment and we would place in the single stream equipment. That ability alone saved roughly $6 million on this proposal, and we've worked very hard to try to fit it into an existing system. We're essentially recycling our recycling building, if you will. These are the commodities that we can see with a single stream system. So if you look on the far right, you see a PET water bottle. That's a number 1 plastic material. In the middle, you've got that HDPE colored, and you see some of those white milk jugs. That's another commodity. On the top left is kind of what we're doing now, which is a 3 through 7. We're actually mixing a 1 through 7, but the 3 through 7 fraction's still there. Aluminum or ferrous cans on the bottom. So the MRF allows us to separate the commodities, put those commodities to market at markets across the Midwest. On the fiber side, this is what we see. This is that clean brown material on the left, and then on the right side, you've got the white office paper. The material on the left is a product that we'd like to move to Manistee paper or UP paper. They have a need for clean brown material, and I think it's a great opportunity to support an Upper Peninsula business. Glass option. This project does include a glass option. We do have an opportunity to repurpose glass. I think it's something we've been working hard on regarding how we're viewing this material. We still have a lot of misconception regarding recycling glass. We're not going to recycle glass in Marquette County because we're not going to make new glass. We're going to repurpose the glass. We're going to use it more locally. So There's been talk of Marquette County Road Commission, and we certainly have had some discussions with them. We also want to use it locally on site. We've got landfill roads that need to be sanded. We also have a lot of area that we could potentially landscape with some of the larger product that the machine produces. It is a source separated item, meaning that it will not be a part of the curbside bin. So this is single stream recycling minus glass, because we live in Marquette and we need to preserve the quality of the products that we have. Glass is broken when it comes in, it gets crushed by the equipment, the haulage equipment, and it becomes encased in the plastic and in the paper. So we'd like to see it separated. It's a municipality collection option, so if you'd like to, as a township, provide a glass option to residents, it could be curbside. It could be a drop-off location, or residents could certainly deliver it directly to the authority. We believe it's the best solution based on our location. We're doing a lot of market research and development. I know some of the questions that have come from not only the township but the MCTA about what the value of glass and what it will be worth. I can tell you now that we've been working with Michigan Tech regarding utilizing the material in asphalt and in roads. We've also engaged Eagle Mine to potential backfill mixed with sand. We've also engaged Eagle, the other Eagle, the new formerly MDQ Eagle, regarding potential landfill construction, cell construction in the future. So there's things that we're working on, but the reality is right now, this would be a product that we'd want to repurpose locally, and my guess would be is that the landfill would be using a majority of it on their roads to sand roads and to do on-site landscaping projects. We estimate right now about 700 tons per year of glass under the current program. That's not a lot of glass. Works out to be about 3,000 cubic yards. The road commission used 9,000 cubic yards of sand last year in Ishpeming and 4,000 out of the Scandia West branch. So we're not producing enough material to have an impact on what the road commission is using versus the sand. But it is something that we're working on, and certainly if we get more, it may be an option. This is the glass machine. Again, it's part of the capital plan that we have. This is a company out of New York called Endella. Produces a fine sand material and a 3-inch minus aggregate, which we do have some samples which we'll pass around at the end. Local project goals for this project: we want to minimize landfill disposal of recyclables and extend the life of the facility, and we want to increase access to recycling. We have a participation problem in Marquette County. Our current recycling rate is about 8%. State average is 15%. I think we can do better. And we need a consistent education and outreach program for the students that we see every season who come out. We're educating dual residential and commercial single stream. And then job creation upon growth. I think there's an opportunity here not only on site for opportunities within the Solid Waste Authority, but also the raw materials that we're producing at our facility are going to be shipped to different markets across the region, but is there an opportunity here more locally where we could be producing a flake or a pellet of plastic that could potentially be putting directly into manufacturing? So those are some things that we thought, further down the road that this could potentially lead to. On the regional side, again, the project's been sold as a regional facility. We want to increase capacity in the Upper Peninsula, increase the state's recycling rate. As I said, we want to support Michigan businesses, and we are definitely aligning ourselves with current state initiatives, which are landfill less and recycle more. And the concept is to manage materials. It's not throw things away. So, Marquette County would be considered very linear, meaning we buy things and we use them and we throw them away, versus circular, which is buy things, use things, sort those materials and put those back into manufacturing. And that's kind of what they call closing the loop, and I think that that's something we can improve on. And then certainly a leader in rural recycling. I've had many, as we've been through this project, the distance, the location, the logistics, all those things. We seem to figure out everything else in Upper Michigan. I think this is something that we can figure out also. So we certainly want to be a leader in this recycling venture. Regional concept proposed as a regional, as I said, state rep and Eagle feedback has been fantastic. We've met with the director of DQ, Representative Capenzi, Senator Casperson, Senator McBroom, Senator Prusi. You know, this regional process really led to the funding opportunities that have been presented to us. The Eagle grant and the closed loop fund, which Chris will talk a little bit more about in the business case. The status of the project right now, it is shovel ready. There's an RFP that is prepared and ready to go out. We have developed a tentative timeline for the project, and we have the ability to be online by the fourth quarter of 2020. At this point, what I'm going to do is turn this over to Chris, and he'll talk a little bit about the business case. I also have for each member tonight a written business case that we have presented. I know that's something that came out of the Township Association. It's something that we have wanted to do, but as I have communicated to municipalities, it has been a very dynamic situation regarding financing. We've been bringing in a lot of different players. So we feel pretty good right now, and this written business case is updated as of today, as we received new information today. So, Chris.
Thank you, Brad, and thank you for allowing us to present tonight. My name is Christopher Manguson. I'm the Director of Finance and Benefits at the Marquette County Solid Waste. All right, project cost is about $5.9 million. Because a new facility ranges between $12 and $15 million, because we're modifying a current facility, it's about half of what a normal single stream recycling project would cost. Right now, our project funding, right now we have $3 million that we're prepared to receive from the closed loop fund. What that is that's a conglomeration of private businesses that put together a fund for developing, recycling and environmental friendly projects, and that's 0% interest, 10 years, quarterly payments about $75,000. We also have an Eagle grant, formerly the DEQ. We have $800,000 that we have not signed yet, but it is available to us. So that brings the total financing to $3.8 million that is nearly confirmed. Excuse me. That leaves us about $2.1 million. Right now, we're exploring different options for that. One is a grant from the state of Michigan or the USDA. We have a lot of paperwork out there, especially for the USDA, that we've been preparing for. The second is a loan from the USDA. They came to the table as long as we get our paperwork in place. 30 years, $2.1 million at a 3.75% interest. And the last option would be a loan from a financial entity like a private lender, bank. And we actually have 3 letters that we had to supply to the USDA showing interest that would finance the remainder of the project. Projected tons and revenue stream. Right now, there's about 6,000 tons available in Marquette County that we can recycle. We also have some feelers for some outlying counties, Menominee County, out east, Alger County, different things like that we could bring in recycling product that would help this project. Second year, we look at about 8,000 tons. Why would there be more? More awareness, more education, getting everything out there so that the public can realize what they can do with recycling. As you can see in year 3 and year 4, it continues. The total tons of the area's interest that we are looking at is about 19,000 tons. That's what's available to recycle throughout the region that we're looking at. When Brad says it to make it a regional facility, that's what we're looking to do. Tipping fees, $0 for Marquette County material. Anything brought in that we recycle, there's no tipping fee affiliated. Anything outside of the county will be $20 a ton. That's what we're looking at right now. That's volume, and that's something that we hope that even at $20 a ton, we can still gather a lot of volume out of that. Right now, the outgoing recycling market's between $52 and $60 a ton. The reason that's different as opposed to what Brad alluded to, what we're currently doing with our market, it's a pure product. And like I'm not as knowledgeable as he is as far as the plastics and that, but there's higher value to having a pure product that we send out, with our recycling product. Projected cash flows, okay? Initially, there's going to be about a $280,000 investment between getting online and also the implementation of the glass processor. I did not include that in the cash flows. I just wanted to show the pure operation of the single stream and what it's capable of once we get enough tonnage coming in and continuous education. After year 1, we show a positive cash flow of about $7,000. That's less your operational expenses, less the payments we make to the closed loop fund, and also less the private lender payment that we have. Including with the recycling income was the increase in tipping fees to help cash flow this project, okay? You see with the tipping fee, that makes it a positive after year 1. Year 2, more awareness, we get more education out there, the product comes in, we get higher recycling income. You can see a little more positive cash flow after year 2, and by year 3, we could be up to $127,000 in positive cash flow just with the straight operations of the facility. We still have a big investment at the beginning of to implement it, so in reality, it would be roughly negative $150,000 in cash flow, but you can see the positive impact as we progress. This is the key one, in my opinion. This is the indirect cost savings of putting single stream recycling and educating the public on what it can do. Right now, we recycle on the far right, we're at the dual stream, and we recycle at about a 10% recycling rate. Per cell, we estimate about 450,000 tons per cell at the landfill to go into a cell. So you can see we have roughly 63,000 tons of material brought in on an annual basis. So let's start fresh with a new cell, 450,000 tons available in the cell. Year 1, the cell capacity available with single stream, 402,000. Year 1, 393,000. As you can see, as it progresses through the years, by year 6, you almost have one whole year of landfill capacity saved by going to single stream recycling. You have almost 56,000 tons more available in your landfill because of single stream recycling. That's the indirect cost savings that I feel is underappreciated in this project the most. I think that just the preservation of landfill is huge, and forward for generations and generations that we can preserve it as much as we can. Summarize what I've been up here trying to accomplish. Project cost, $5.9 million. 2/3 of it's nearly confirmed funding. $3.8 million is just basically waiting for a signature. The tonnage increases annually with non-county material, and the non-county material, the potential of that is huge. I mean, we estimated 1,000 tons the first year. We have a lot of incoming interest in bringing that material that can make that number even larger. $0 tipping fees for Marquette County material. Now, it saves the constituent municipalities money because they get billed per ton on solid waste coming in. They do not get billed per ton for recyclables coming in, okay? And the final thing is obviously the landfill life extension. The cost savings of the landfill and the cell construction is huge, in my opinion. I'll turn this back over to Brad. Any questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's summarize this project first. County recycling program, yes, has been evaluated for the past 18 to 24 months. We did a survey, we hired a consultant, we did a feasibility study. The project would change the county, convert the county from dual to single stream recycling. Proposed project provides an option for glass, a regional concept, blended financing has led to significant funding opportunities, The authority is pursuing additional funding. Chris alluded to the 2.1. We've got several things going right now, looking for the most cost-effective option for that portion of the project. Proposed project is shovel-ready, could be online by fourth quarter 2020. And we are requesting support from our constituent municipalities. And I know that we did receive a letter from the township, and really based in part, from what I understood, that just, information, not being able to come here and explain what was happening. I hope tonight come away from it just with a better understanding of the project and what we're trying to accomplish. Director summary, I had mentioned this earlier. I just want to run through this, and I'm sure there's many other factors involved in this, but just from this process, this project itself, we look at a couple different things right out of the gate. It's environmental and it's regulatory and the landfill impact. And then we ask questions and run through the flow chart, and that's we can improve. Okay, I think we can improve. I said this back in May of 18. We're still piling up fiber and cardboard and plastics in our landfill. I think we can improve, but the question is how. And then the economic feasibility question comes in right behind that. So we're thinking environment, we're thinking regulatory, we're thinking landfill. Now we got to finance it. Can I bring it to the table? I mean, it's one of the things in this, and I think, being somewhat of a new director in the last 3 years and really kind of starting to, feel more confident, comfortable with what's going on, wrapping my arms around the entire operation. Yes, in this case, with the funding that was available, the grant that was available, and the no-interest loan from Closed Loop Fund, we were nearly 2/3 funded. Okay, I put a number up on the screen for you, just over $1 million. That's what the Solid Waste Authority has received in grant funding from the state of Michigan in the last 12 months. Over $1 million, okay? We have established a rapport with the state of Michigan. We've opened our doors and we've said, here's how we're doing business, and I want to make sure that we're in compliance. Tell us what we need to do. And you know what? It's paid dividends. We're doing things the right way, and it's led to these type of opportunities. Those funds include the $800,000 grant for the infrastructure, a $202,000 grant for a tire shredder, which is going to allow us to be a regional tire facility, $40,000 for scrap community tire days, which we've got 8 sites planned this summer. Josh is steering that effort, getting scrap tires out of the woods. So I look at all these things, and I look at a private investor like Closed Loop Fund, which I have brought some information tonight, and I say, folks are invested in Marquette County. And our hope is that this trend will continue. But we're over $1 million from the state right now in the last 12 months. It's, I know there's been some issues and some questions, but there's another side to this, and it's positive. And we want to make this the best that we can make it, and we want to be a leader in it. And then the last part here is plan, propose, and implement, maintain, and that's kind of been this whole trek here. Planning this, proposing it to the board, having these discussions, bringing it to the boards, the commissions, and then implementation of this and maintain what we're doing. So where do we go from here? As of today, here's what the status is, and here's where the authority's at. We're going to wait for formal notification from Eagle on $800,000. We got a verbal, I got a phone call this past week. And then we need to procure building modification costs. Once we do that, we review that equipment modifications costs. We do a project budget review. We make sure everything is in line with what we've proposed, which is $5.9 million. And if there's any issues or questions, then we go to our board and we look for amendments or actions if required, and if it's feasible. And we've done a lot of work on the RFP, and our plan is that this will come in at roughly about where we planned it, but we won't make any moves until we've got those documents in order. And then at that point, we place an order for equipment, and we commence project construction. Some of the support letters that we've received. That third column over on the bottom, that City of Hancock, that's interesting. There are a lot of eyes on Marquette County right now on what's going to happen here and what we're going to do. There's a lot of folks, there's a lot of communities that do not have the opportunity to have recycling in their communities because they don't have a place to go. The closest MRF or recycling facility is 125 miles away from Marquette. So we are getting interest from outside of the county. We partnered with Uber Shirts about 6 months ago. They've been working real hard with us on our logos and our campaign, and this will all be part of the outreach moving forward. But more details in regarding the business case, certainly in the written business case that, again, I've got for each member tonight. And we'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have right now. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. I really appreciate you guys taking the time. This is vital. We need to inform the public, and we need to be able to support this. I think it's important. I think we all agree with that. I have questions. Who wants to start? Pete?
I'm really glad that Brad and Randy took on this project, or whoever did, because after reading the paper tonight, you'll see what happens why we don't do something about our landfill. And what went into the old landfill was really, I know a lot of stuff went in there, so, but now what's happening there is kind of a tragedy, and hope that we can get that cured up. But to be working ahead of the ball instead of just kicking the can down the road I think is the right way to go. You asked about contracts. One of the questions that always come up is contract. Do we have any contract people sign up they will bring their glass, and that, do you have to have that for loans and stuff like that?
No, we don't have to have that for loans. Regarding volume outside of Marquette County, we have been working with the private haulers. That is the direct line. There certainly is a desire to sit down with county commissions and say, this is what we're doing. And, but for our purpose and what we needed to do, we needed to deal with the private haulers. So what we did is we went to them and we presented them with what the business case tipping fee was for out-of-county material. We've gotten a lot of questions on this. Well, why would anybody bring material to Marquette County? Well, from a transportation standpoint, it's point A to point B. And if it's cheaper for them to stop coming from the east side and stop in Marquette than to drive it all the way to Wisconsin, guess what? It's coming to us. So we've been given some projections on numbers. We have not been given any signed contracts. Private haulers have inferred that they will deliver this material to us. Now that's on the straight volume side. On the market side, we have had some developments in contracts, and we have had folks interested in signing 10-year arrangements guaranteeing our material going to different mills across the Midwest, which would include Sunoco U.S. Papers out of Monash-De-Pere, or potentially Pratt down in Ohio. Nationally, if you watch news, recycling is ugly. It's failing. The markets are terrible. It's a regional type of thing. If you're on the West Coast, it's difficult. In the Midwest, for example, Pratt is building a $260 million paper plant in Ohio right now as we speak. There's investment happening. It depends on where you are. So we're fortunate to be in the Midwest. We've never had an issue moving materials from the Solid Waste Authority, and I detailed some of that in the written business case. It's been a question of the value of material because of how we're doing it. So I'm confident that we can move the material, but to your question directly, Pete, no signed contracts with material out of county.
Is Marquette County going to buy the real fine stuff? Did they, they say, well, we could use all you could get, but or do they really mean they're going to buy it from you, or do you give it to them, or?
The road commission.
I think that's a road we cross when we get there. I mean, certainly. I mean, again, you're dealing with a volume right now on a residential glass program that's not very high. We're going to start small, 1 to 2 ton unit, and we leave room in the building to expand. And if the bottle bill changes, okay, now you're talking about a lot of material, and that becomes kind of a separate project in itself. There's a lot of labor and work involved with glass if we're going to go that route. But as it stands, from a the constituent municipality standpoint, we had to take care of Marquette County and get their glass out of the landfill. And that's where we're set up right now, what we plan to do.
Seems like you're very comfortable with the numbers as far as the money is concerned and the return on investment and that. So.
We've done a lot of market study and research, and we've relied also on our consultant who has given us a range. At the end of the day, it's a market. It's certainly a concern. The first question came, is there a guarantee materials coming? No. And the market is up and down. There's some things here that are a part of this, and we're dealing in part with some projections and estimates. And that's the reality, and that's the part of this project that is you can't wrap your arms fully around it because it is somewhat of a moving target.
Brad, did you answer the questions from the Marquette Township Association, the list of questions that they sent? Was those questions answered?
No, it was not. I didn't receive the letter until Friday about 3 o'clock. Right. So I will, though. Okay. Absolutely.
Anybody else? Questions? Dave?
It just seems like, and I'm just going to throw out the negative here, it just seems like every time we come to a point, in dealing with the landfill, there's a great lack of information, and nothing comes and nobody shows up until the board digs their heels in and says no. And from my perspective, that's where support for that non-support letter came from, is there's just no information to base a decision on. And this is the most we've gotten as long as I've been on the board. It'd be interesting to sit down and take a look at that and go over what you got, but it would be nice to be able to get some information on a more regular basis without having to throw down the gauntlet with letters of non-support. It would just be nice to receive that in a more timely fashion.
I understand, Dave, and as I said earlier, I know we did make some efforts to get here in the past few months, and we were unable to. I would like to just add one thing to that. If you go back in the last 2 years, the 30 minutes, and again, that's not the same. There's certainly, additional ways to communicate, but we have been discussing this project for 2 years. We also had a constituent authority meeting in December of 2018, which we flew a consultant into town to deliver a feasibility study result. We only had 50% of constituent municipalities participate in that meeting. I mean, this is the single largest investment in this facility in the 30 years of its existence. And we brought everything to the table, and we only had 50% participation. So I agree, and I will make efforts to do a better job. I just think that I have to find a way to communicate it more effectively, so in turn we're getting this coming back and it's continuous. So again, I apologize, and I will make efforts to do a better job. I will.
Ann?
I just have a question. How many people in Marquette County use the landfill? I'm talking, through all the different haulers and roughly.
Boy, I don't have a hauler list in front of me. I think the last time we checked, it was roughly 400. We ran a hauler list. That would include all the small haulers to include
How many residents is that?
I don't know the answer to that one, Dan, no.
What my question is about is basing your survey on 203 residents. I don't feel that's a strong enough number I'd like to see a better survey done than 203 residents and basing your percentages and everything off that.
Right. Understand, yeah. It was a survey that was low numbers, Marquette County residents only. That coupled with the feedback that we've received as an organization for the past 2 years regarding what we're doing and how we're doing it. We also gauge it in looking at the numbers regarding recycled tons coming in. It's really leveled off, and that coupled with the feedback that we received, it's pretty clear that we need to at least take a look at this, and that's when we kind of kick things off. But I don't think that, it's fair. It's not accurate representation, totally.
People, I
it's in part.
believe, that were miffed about the glass situation and thinking our glass was being recycled, and it wasn't for quite some time. So, and
I felt that. I did.
You don't think that they were happy?
I did. I was made aware that people were not happy that glass was not being recycled, yes. Very much so.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Yes.
And if this, I don't know how you would do a survey to really show all of the residents that are using the system, but I just felt that 203 was not a good representation of everybody out there using it.
Go ahead.
I just want to take a minute to thank you and your other spokesman. I think I agree with Dave. This is the most impressive presentation that we've had come before us. And I think that you deserve credit for that. And I want to thank you personally.
Thank you.
We need to know more, and I know you want to share more, but this is a big, touchy subject, and I think you know, I'm sure you're aware of that. Anytime you talk about millage, you raise the hair on the back of most people's neck that sit in government. But today you've come a long way. And I think you need to be grateful that it was well received. We're still a long way from any decision, but we're a lot smarter. And thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ernie.
A couple things. We talk about glass a lot. As far as recycling glass, how are you going to get it, and how are you going to get homeowners to do it? Because right now, they used to just put it separate, and then they put it in the garbage. Now you're going to tell them to do something else. How are you going to educate them to selectively put it someplace?
That's a great question. I think how we're going to do it is we're going to do it together. And I think that's where the constituent municipality comes into play. I think we have to set a standard and say, this is what we can and can't accept in our program. And then we have to educate the residents and provide the information. And we're going to invest a significant amount of time and resources in education because that's how this program goes. To answer your question, how are you going to get them to do it? Well, it's going to depend on what Marquette Township wants to do. If we're going to have curbside recycling with our waste hauler, and we're going to include a glass option on that. Some of the other entities have talked about keeping one of the rigid weeks glass weeks, so we won't pick up single stream that week, we'll just keep it glass. Or maybe you have drop-off locations throughout the township that get serviced by your waste hauler, or perhaps residents bring it directly in. I think the reality is we're going to see some of it in our MRF. We don't want to, but just like every program, you're not going to capture it all. But the education piece is important, and this is the part that I look forward to the most, is working with the constituents and getting effective outreach to the residents. It's important, it's critical. The value of recycling, the issues in value recycling is because of contamination, because people are not placing items in the bin that belong in the bin. So, you know, there's a lot of work to do, and that's what, if this project comes to fruition, that's a big part of the next 12 months prior to coming online, is this is what you can put in the bin, this is what you can't, and hammer it home. It's roughly $1 to $2 per resident to have an effective education outreach, and we've already started working on that with our consultants. So, you know, we're going to take the lead, and we're going to say this is what our program can take, and then we're going to furnish that information to the municipalities. And we need the municipalities, along with the private haulers, to educate the residents. It's a collective effort. It has to be.
I think the other thing is going back to finances. You're talking about $3 million and $2 million, something like that. Come up with about $5 million. $3 million from somewhere and $2 million from some kind of a professional or banking or something like that. How is the money going to come to pay for these? Where's it going to come from?
Okay, let's break that portion of it down. I know Chris had talked about it briefly, and we certainly do have it in the business case. The $3 million closed loop fund zero interest loan will be paid back by the tipping fee increase that was implemented by the board back in May. That funding is for the payback of that loan. The Eagle grant is a no payback. That's $800K. That's there. The 2.1 that remains is going to be financed with the sale of recyclables and the out-of-county volume that we receive. So that's where the funding mechanism comes for that. So yes, is it important to get out-of-county tons? Absolutely. Do we have out-of-county tons in line? Not signed contracts, Pete, as we talked earlier, but we have volume that logistically makes sense to come our way because, again, from a transportation standpoint, it's point A to point B. It's cheaper for them to come to us. We have a very competitive rate, so that's how that portion of the financing will be paid for. And again, exploring several different options there, different lending institutions, also seeking some state funding, also additional state funding.
I was at that meeting you had, and a question I raised then is that $3 million with the tipping fees was X percent.
I computed that out real quickly. In 10 years, you would pay that off. What's going to happen to that tipping fee at that point in time?
I remember that question. I do, and I think I got to the podium and I said this, I said, if we make money, then the first thing that we look at and take to our board is lowering the tipping fees. But there are a few things that we have to look at. We have to look at the 10-year capital plan for the equipment that we have in place, and we also have to look at the education and see where it's at. But the goal would be to lower those fees for the constituent municipalities. Absolutely. And as I've stated before, along with any tipping fee increase that we've had, the board will review that each year before, implementation. But in this case, with this plan that we have, our goal would be to lower the tipping fees.
Along with that, within the last couple of years, you took the dollars that we put for closure fees and put it over to equipment and that.
Right.
Capital.
Capital, or call it whatever you want.
Right.
And you use that for equipment and that, and we're paying through the tipping fees for that $3 million and that. I really question the necessity for maintaining that percent that was put over to whatever you want to call it and that.
Sure.
At that point in time, that should be able to go away then too. Because to me, when we paid as a township for closing fees, that should have been kept at closing fees, but you moved it over to capital and that. And, capital is, to me, is purchasing either equipment or structures or something like this here. And if you're going with the new buildings and that, I get real concerned with all the dollars coming in and what's it all going to be used for after a point in time in that too. So.
Okay, I can address that. There's a 75 cent per ton, and that's what you're referring to. That is money that is allocated either to post-closure or to 5-year cap. Post-closure has to be maintained at a certain level per the state of Michigan. So we have those funds, and we also have a letter of credit. When we meet that requirement, that 75 cents then is in our 5-year capital plan, which is equipment. We keep that there as the state moves forward, raises an inflation rate, or potentially with the new House Bill 6483 that's in right now, that could rework the post-closure worksheets, which potentially could increase post-closure. So we keep that flexibility there. So if we have, because we have to maintain a certain level, so if we have to allocate a certain amount of the tipping fee to that, that's why that's there. So it is 75 cents. It is currently going into 5-year cap, and it could be moved to post-closure if necessary. We haven't had to move that fund to post-closure for a while. We've maintained it. I believe right now it's about 2.1, maybe closer to 3. We're in compliance, but that number can change, and it can increase, certainly. So to be prepared, we've kept it there. So instead of moving into the general, we're putting it towards a piece of equipment or the purchase of a future piece of equipment.
I don't like that idea at all, because if you've got, I think it is close to 3 million in the, is it? Okay, there was one report I saw, it was like 2.8. But anyway, that, to me, that's kind of scary, because if you're taking money, why not just leave it in there? If you're taking money out that's in a capital fund that you might use, now you can't, you don't have access to it to put it there should something happen. That's just one observation, because I wasn't sure how you were doing that. The other thing I'm concerned with is you had $1 million initially from DEQ.
Yep.
Now it's 800,000.
Yep.
So you've got 2.1 that you have to come up with.
Right.
Okay. I just want to hone this down a little bit, because these are the questions I'm getting to.
Yep.
If the $6 per ton increase in tipping fees that was motioned at the last board meeting is only to cover the $300,000 a year, to cover the $3 million 10-year
Yep.
grant loan,
Right.
no interest loan, you still don't have a mechanism to pay the 2.1. It was 1.9, now you got a couple $100,000 more on there. So say you go to a bank and you're going to expect to use the revenue from all of these other sources to pay that, and that doesn't happen. You got a 4.5% 10 or 20-year loan. What happens? Now it's coming out of the general fund? Do you have something, some kind of a contingency for that? Because it's very possible, as much as I hope this goes, I think it's a fabulous idea. You have to be practical about having that money established ahead of time. You can't sign these, in my mind, you can't sign these agreements and say, we have $2.1 million we need to pay back, and we're expecting to have that level of income from these other sources. And what if that doesn't happen? It's got to come out of the general fund. It's got to come out of someplace else, that something else is going to get increased. Now you've doubled or at least increased your debt responsibility.
Right.
It doesn't seem responsible to me.
Okay. I guess first point would be regarding the 2.1 remaining, and as I said at the end of the presentation, what the authorities' moves are moving forward. Once we receive the equipment, we have the equipment. Once we receive the modifications costs through the RFP process, then we will do a final budget review and we will take a look. As I said earlier, and I think some of the members have alluded to it already, you have a portion of this project that we are relying on tipping fees from out-of-county material and the value of the material to pay back for part of the project. That is where we're at. That's the projections, the estimates, the work that we've done with the consultant for the last 8 months. These are the numbers that we have. These are the numbers that we expect. These are values at the lowest market value, the mid-market value, the high market value. That's where we're at right now.
And you think the bank would guarantee, or a bank, or?
Bank's already guaranteed it. We have it.
2.1?
It's already there.
If you choose to.
And as in, we're exploring several different options regarding that. It is actually that terms agreement that was signed by our lending institution is for 1.9 because we've had some changes here in the last couple of days. That's correct. The DEQ grant, all DEQ grants were cut by 20% across the board to encourage more funds sharing. They had 60 applicants, so they did cut them.
I had asked you too at the last meeting, what's your time frame with signing contracts, or how do you get the money guaranteed? When is there a deadline? In other words, you've gone ahead and done the tipping fees, so you've got that part of the money done.
Right.
Where are you with your contracts and signing, and what happens if? Can you change your mind or not?
We won't sign any contracts, and I summarized that a little bit earlier. As I said, we will first secure the formal notification from the state. We will go through the RFP process, which is estimated to be completed by the end of July. At that point, we'll have our costs for construction modifications. We will review that along with equipment, and then we will see where we're at. Chris and I have been working on this, and listen, I want it to go too, but there also is a reality of if construction costs come in higher than anticipated, we have to take a close look at it. And like I said, at that point, we go back to our board and we say, here's where we're at. There's still some hurdles that we have to get over. From a timeline standpoint, there is some requirements on the equipment side. Again, our goal would be to get this project kicked off next month at some point. It's probably looking like it'd be more late in the month because I don't think we'll get formal notification from Eagle until probably 2 or 3 weeks from now. But it's another discussion that we'll have to have at our board level and say this is where we're at and understand how all of these different financing options are getting paid back. Like I said, right now, that's where we're at. So we haven't signed anything, and we won't sign anything until we get all information. And then it'll be reviewed, and Chris and I will review the budget, the project budget, and then we'll go from there. If it's over, if it's beyond what we projected, we go to our board and say, this is what we have. At the end of the day, you have to be able to afford it, period. Again, great program, would love to do it, want to educate, all those things, but I mean, there is a reality also on what we can do. So that's certainly in the forefront of our mind. It's not locked up, guaranteed. We have pushed for the past 4 months, certainly, to get this moving, but we needed to. We had a private investor who was looking and seeing what kind of the flow of things were, and, you know, they've continued to stay with us, and everybody's there at the table. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what a consultant says. What matters is what we look at internally, and we make a decision in the best interest of the authority. And if that funding is not there and it's not manageable, we won't do it. And we'll go back to the drawing board and see what we can do. I don't want to do that, but that's part of it. It's part of it. You know, you invest a lot of time and effort in these things, and sometimes that's what happens. But it's been an education, as you said, you know, so.
Okay, I mean, that's what I'm pretty sure we're all concerned about. I'm anxious to see your financial projections. And I think you said, there was, I don't remember the slide, it had the 4.5 as one of the options for
Right.
like a bank funding.
Yep.
There was another option too that was some kind of a grant or?
Yeah, USDA loan at 3.75.
That's what you mentioned.
And Chris had talked about that, and then, you know, there's some other lending institutions that are out there that we're working with.
That's not the urban whatever, right?
No,
That's something
that is not.
different. And you
Both
have
the
a
Urban
meeting
Act
on
and the millage were both items that would had to be put in place by the county commission. And they had to resolve to do that, so.
Okay. Dave?
Was there a mention on the top of that list? Did I see something in your presentation about some federal grants that may be available? The funding, that 2.1?
We have been pursuing, not federally, state dollars. Again, regional impact, Upper Peninsula, move the needle. I mean, our position is that if we're going to invest and we're going to put, you know, ourselves in that position, then we want every dollar we can get towards this. Absolutely. And as of right now, that hasn't happened, but it is something that we continue to pursue. So we'll continue to work on that.
And then it's safe to say that any grants would go toward the cost of the loan, anything you got even after, right? Or I'm assuming you wouldn't stop looking for grants.
No, we're pursuing several. We've engaged the tribes. We've, you know, we're active. We're, you know, and again, some of these dollars we may see later on as we, you know, progress here. So, but
Is the information you have available for us tonight, does that include this presentation you did tonight? Or?
It doesn't include the presentation. I can certainly email it to all of the board members, or I can get it to, actually Randy's got it on the machine.
I got it on the computer, and I can email it before we leave tonight.
Okay, all right, I would like to see that.
The one good thing, Brad, you got going is over the last several years, you've been promoting this, and most people that I talk to, and you know, and I ask the question, they're all for recycling. But the only thing we have to do is get it to be simple. And the biggest problem with recycling, if they put the wrong bin out, so you know, and then they, oh, I forgot, you know. So they want to recycle.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel bad throwing glass in. I put it on the edge of the counter. My wife said, "We got to throw. You can't save any more of those."
Right.
So that's a good thing.
Right.
Now, I think we sold a lot of them on recycling. Now we have to just make it work.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think our feedback at the landfill has been the
So
same.
it's more than the 200 and some people that we, on the survey, because I've talked to over 200 and some people, you know, at different times over the last several years about recycling. And so, just keep it simple.
Yeah, thank you, Pete.
Anything else?
Say one other question. What would be the feasibility of having a dump station, like say down at Waste Management or something? I like the idea of the glass where people could bring it and just get rid of it. Mm-hmm. Rather than putting it out, like Pete said, if they miss the day, then, you know, now what do I do?
Right.
Are they willing to work with you on this and have that right, like in town, right there by their transfer station?
I think that's something that the township would probably want to work out with their private hauler. And again, it comes back to that municipality option. We are going to be in the position where we need the material delivered to us, And we'll certainly be there to assist in any way that we can with different ideas or have discussions, certainly to help the townships out. I'd be glad to do that. I think the drop-off location works. I know North Country's got a spot on 492, not exactly, you know, like it was before with the brush across the highway, which I'm sure was great for residents. But that would be, the suggestion would be to get with, you know, them, and then maybe there is somewhere, you know, within the, you know, within the township, within maybe a residential, where there's some open area where maybe you could do something. Those programs can work, but they also have to be managed, or they can turn into illegal dumping, so.
Well, then I'm thinking it can't
Also
be
not.
broken glass either. Is that correct, or does that?
Oh, no, it can be, yeah, it's fine.
Doesn't matter?
That's fine.
Okay.
Clean, feedstock, glass, it's fine.
Okay. Are we good? Okay, thanks. Hope it works.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you coming and all the hard work you put into it.
I do have that information here again. I also have I'm just going to drop these off to you guys. The business case, a little bit about closed loop fund also, I think is important, probably something you guys might want to check out, and then the business case itself, so. Thank you.
Thanks. If you happen to look at the whole packet, you'll see that I have been including a big part of your packet for every meeting, and I try to give an update. Just the numbers is the only thing we
Thank
really
you.
struggled with.
That's why they have to add another truck. Thanks, Brad.
Okay. Ready?
I think he's got one more piece of paper for us here.
More pictures. There you go.
Lots of stuff.
File's getting bigger all the time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Joe's son, right? Nephew?
Okay. That was rather lengthy, but it was very informative. I think we needed to hear a lot of that stuff. Next up is community linkage. Anything anybody wants to share, what they're hearing in the community? I have one to share. My 5-year-old grandson ended up doing a field trip at Lions Field, and he was just excited about it from his, I hate to say daycare because he's older than that, but he thought the park was awesome. He's been there before, but he was younger, and he's done the bouncing. We've gone for community days and stuff, but he was just, for some reason, overly thrilled about it. And I told him, I said that the township, he knows kind of what I do, and I said, the township put that park in for you and the kids and everybody to enjoy. And he came up and grabbed me and he just hugged me and he said, Grammy, you got to tell the township that I think this is great. So I promised I would.
So you just did?
I did. So I had to share. He says, you promise? I said, I promise I'll tell the board how happy you are that you have the field. So that's all I have to share. Okay, committee updates. 8A, planning, rec, roads, events. What can you share with us? Dave?
Should be fairly quick. The Planning Commission meeting was canceled for June 12th. The next meeting is going to be the 26th of this month. And the Road Committee meeting, as I mentioned last meeting, the June 4th meeting was canceled and moved to June 11th. The theory was that we would get the final draft of the completed transportation plan, and then we could forward it to the Planning Commission on their June 12th meeting. And that didn't work out so good, so we did get the final draft of the transportation plan, and we did move it to the Planning Commission for their review at the June 26th meeting. The Recreation Committee, that meeting was just prior to this one. And there is has been a change, as you're all aware. The cleanup was canceled for a couple of weeks ago, and it's been rescheduled for Saturday, June 22nd. Same schedule from 10 a.m. at the Township Hall here until 2 p.m., and it'll wrap up with a barbecue over at Lions Field. Yeah, the barbecue begins at noon, by the way.
Okay. How about events? We just had an awesome car show. I didn't get there, I went by. Pete, did you wanna?
Yeah, we had about
Something?
97 cars. The weather was perfect. Usually by 2 something, we always say we gotta get out of here, it's gonna start raining at 3 o'clock, but today we didn't have to, so it was very nice. They had a little parade through the township. The food was great. Super One did a great job as far as brats and hot dogs and stuff like that. It was really good. The whole event went really, it was a very good event, especially because of the weather, I should say. But there was really some nice cars in there. You know, brought back a lot of memories, and one guy had it all grinded down his pickup. You can see no plastic in that thing. So it was, and they're happy. The people seem to be very happy being there, and so they're gonna be there next year, so.
So then our next event's Community Days. Do you remember what date that is off the top of your head?
August
August 3rd.
Saturday.
Then I just want to say about, you know, we have our people from the township grounds. They did a great job setting it up, tearing it down. This year I couldn't do much helping, but the people we had there, they just dug in, took care of it. It was just great. And we're very proud of them.
Sure, Randy appreciates hearing that about his staff.
Don't tell them that, though.
Yeah. They might even listen to this, you never know. Yeah, I think those are our main committees. There was a request then for consider dissolution of the ad hoc committee. If you remember, this board put 3 members on an ad hoc committee to discuss the superintendent's replacement. And we didn't kind of close that off and disband that committee, so that's what the item on here is for. So since we made a motion, we need a motion to dissolve that committee since it's not functioning anymore.
I'll make a motion to dissolve that
And I'll
committee.
second it.
Okay. Any questions or anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay, draft committee reports. So you've got that in your packet. If you remember, we pulled these out a little bit because it's not part of the regular approval part with our reports, because these are draft. 9A then, now, is going to be Kirk. Consider proposal for professional engineering services, sewer system GIS assistance. So I'll back up my screen.
Okay, we have a proposal from Stantec, Michigan, for engineering services, specifically for the sewer system GIS assistance. And this relates directly to the township wastewater asset management grant project, which is due, all the submittals are due by the end of November. We had already developed a sizable GIS-based inventory prior to the start of this project, but you know, there's still some missing assets and some items that need to be more detailed. And because of the township staff workload, and we just haven't been able to provide that to Stantec in a timely manner. So we requested from them some ideas on how we could get that accomplished more efficiently. And they have submitted this proposal to help us out. And our hope is, you know, if you agree to this proposal for the wastewater, the staff could be able to devote more time to the water amp which we don't have a grant for, but which is also due at the same time. So specifically, there are basically to help us move forward the AMP development, is they would basically do some digitizing work and that we haven't been able to finish yet. And also, along with that, they're going to help us with the we've got current AMP software. That's a major part of what we're trying to do here, which the software is included in the grant. And while that's not a requirement of the grant, it is something that they approved and something that they would like to see. And so they were going to assist us basically with developing that, developing that, and basically integrate that with that software. And work, with the software company. Because we're in the same situation, like I said, with the water AMP as well. So basically the work plan includes 5 tasks, which is basically digitizing hard copy records of the gravity interceptor sewers. So that's something that we have not done yet. Create new pressure sewer feature class, which is, we basically got the gravity except for the interceptor, but we don't have the pressure lines. Or it's not complete anyway. We had some pressure lines that we had digitized prior to the project. And then also assess with the implementation of the cartograph AMP software. And also the goal there is to make that functional so that when this project is complete in terms of submitting the plan to the state, and I'm gone, the program will be able to continue through this other software, which is basically that software ends up on a field tablet. So all the service workers, so the whole system will be digitized and available from a separate software company's cloud, our data that they can access in the field. So all the assets will be in their handheld, and they can basically, as they do any work, they can just enter the cost. All the costs will be entered, so they just have to put who's doing the work, what equipment are they using, what materials do they use, and how much time do they spend. And it's just a matter of clicking, entering the information, and then that automatically updates that asset through Cartograph, but also it's bidirectional, so it also updates the GIS information in the cloud. So, and if that doesn't start before I go, in my opinion, there's too much of an opportunity for it to not happen at all. Because once you've got a program in place in the office, there's kind of a disconnect between the office and the field staff that's actually doing all the work. So I think that's a very important part. So basically the proposal is outlined here for not to exceed fee of $7,500. And during last year's budget work sessions, I discussed the fact that I had applied for the grant, had to make an application, I had to present some cost, but cost I presented on my application, which got approved, were from 2013. So obviously some of the costs have changed since then, but that doesn't change the grant amount. So I proposed that I knew that was going to probably happen. I also knew that we're going to be receiving from Marquette Township $57,000 to purchase additional capacity that we owned at the wastewater treatment plant. And we have, in fact, and I budgeted, and we did, in fact, receive that money this year. So But I have one additional item here, some clarification. Today, I actually made a submittal to Eagle for reimbursement for 90% of our costs that we've incurred so far, at least during the last period. So I basically redid the numbers. So the original project total that was approved in the application was $224,880. And to date, we have expended $149,582. And then we have remaining under that application, $75,298 are remaining in the, and we basically have to cover 10% of that cost. It's a 90% grant. So for $224,000, basically we have to spend $20,000, a little bit over $20,000. Plus, I also have existing contracts with Stantec, the televising contractor, and a financial consultant remaining, and those total $69,173. So that, what that means is the cost overrun will only be, let's see, that would be proposal for $7,500, so basically like $1,400, which would be the cost overrun. So we would have to pay the 100% of the $1,400, but the remainder would be basically 90% reimbursed. So for all those reasons, I'm requesting approval of the proposal for not to exceed fee of $7,500. And for, I'd actually put, you know, for the funding should be coming from the other revenue line item, 594.50. But it would actually be coming, there would only be a small amount coming from that account number. So it would normally be charged to 590.558, which is like 801, which is professional services. So that's my request, and also I would request authorization to sign the agreement on behalf of the township.
John, go ahead.
I move to concur with the recommendation of the Superintendent of Public Works and grant the professional engineering service outlined in his report for sewer system GIS assistance. The assistance fee not to exceed $7,500.
I'll support that, and I'll authorize the Superintendent of Public Works to sign.
Okay, any other points or questions? I had a couple for Kirk that he already answered. Looking at task 5, that's an optional added value. I show a lot of merit to that. I think that's pretty important, and it is part of that. I think you explained that the $1,500 is the time and materials to cover that. Task 5 gives us more, talks about the ratings and the industry standards, and that's part of that. I don't know if you guys picked up on that. That is included in there, even though it says optional.
Well, that's basically the part to make the cartograph functional for our use in the future.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks, Kirk.
Thank you.
Okay, now our new B, I love these agendas changed. Consider Well Road parcel zoning map amendment, second reading. We just have to have the fact that this is a second reading. I don't know if anybody has any other questions for Randy. Jason's not here.
Yes, I told Jason he didn't need to be here. This came originally, the first readings at your May 24th meeting, I believe it was. There have been no changes to it since. It's back before you for your second reading, and what this involves is the rezoning of the township-owned parcels along the Well Road to restrict uses and to preserve them for board future action.
Anybody? Oh, yes, Dave.
Yeah, I would move to approve the second reading and adopt the proposed zoning map amendment.
Support.
Any questions, comments?
Roll call vote.
Okay, go ahead.
Trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
trustee Marks,
Yes.
trustee LaRue,
Yes.
trustee Everson,
Yes.
treasurer Johnson,
Yes.
secretary is yes, and supervisor Durant.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
You do.
Okay.
Okay, 9B is consider expanded fire rescue staff coverage. Sorry, you guys, I hope you didn't fall asleep here. You learned a lot about solid waste.
Well, where this is coming from is there's been a fair amount of discussion over the past several budget cycles about at what point does the township reach a point where the demand for fire services outstrips our current ability to either provide full-time or reliable part-time response. With regard to that, in the past, the board has recognized the increase in demand to the point of adding additional full-time day staff at the fire department. We now have 3 staffed firefighter EMTs in the fire department on the day shift. I have also filled 2 building and grounds positions with part-time on-call firefighters in a full-time capacity for us. And we also have our assessor is a certified firefighter with the department as well. So on the day shift right now, we have 6 full-time responders available, Monday through Friday. We do not have that after 5 o'clock, and we do not have that on weekends. At those times, we are reliant strictly upon the on-call pool, which is a very active pool and a very highly qualified pool, but it's also a pool that has another full-time job and has family commitments in most cases. So we've been seeing I won't say we've had issues with having responders, but on the weekends it's very difficult, particularly in the summertime. So along with those discussions, the last time this was discussed at the board level, there was a request for the chief and I to do some analysis to determine basically what it would take to provide coverage on a regular scheduled basis for the time frame basically between our end of our day shift, which is 5 o'clock till about 9 o'clock at night, which is a time when the businesses here in the township typically close and traffic drops off and activity levels drop off in the township. We don't any longer have the number of adult beverage related facilities that we once had in the township that caused us some concerns. But we are also seeing on the weekends, we are seeing during the very active hours in the summertime, multiple calls, back-to-back calls that we are reliant upon strictly the on-calls. So we did sit down and take a look at it, and basically what it amounts to is to provide 1 full-time qualified firefighter EMT is going to cost right around $62,000. By the time you take the base salary, which is only about $38,000, would be the base full-time salary, and then add all of the taxes that we have to pay and the other add-ons that we have to pay as a result of retirement, medical care, all of those types of things, pushes it up to about a little over $62,000. That equates essentially to $250,000. So to provide 2 full-time positions would mean adding roughly $500,000 to your special assessment to cover the 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock, 5 days a week slot, basically. If we wanted to add weekends, that would require another 2, which would bump that up to 1 full mill. So that's where we would sit. And at this point, the chief and I, before we go any further with this, wanted to bring it back to the board to give you an order of magnitude of what you might be looking at in terms of cost and what the impact of the residents might be. So to fully cover Monday through Friday between 5 o'clock and 9 o'clock in the evening, and to cover the weekends on the day shift, it's going to mean you'd have to increase your special assessment by 1 mil. To hit just the evenings, 0.5 mil, or just the weekends, 0.5 mil. So that's where we're at, basically.
Very clear to figure out. Can we
The
do?
question, yeah, and that's the question. Now, the question is, do you want to increase the level of service to do that? We are responding on all of those times now, and we are not missing calls at all, but our response time is expanded on the evenings and on the weekends,
Especially with multiple calls.
which we have been getting recently, back-to-back calls. So with that, I'll throw it to the chief and the assistant chief if you have any questions. And, you know, we're here to answer your questions, basically, to help clarify for you. Not asking you for an action tonight, but basically to consider what it is that it would cost to do that, and see if you want to continue to pursue it.
Okay. Dan, what
I'll
do you
just
want?
stress one thing too. What's happening too is, it's those calls. That's 30. I mean, you guys, I don't know. You get the numbers every month anyway. As you can see, during the day, we're responding to approximately 30% of the calls. We're relying on the paid on call for the other 70% of our calls. And what's happening is we're out in 80% of our calls are EMS approximately. What happens is we get to those 2 o'clock in the morning calls, those when you're sleeping calls, you know, like we were talking tonight, you know, when you only go on 4 hours, you do that a couple nights in a row, you're crabby, you go home, you know, it affects people's lives. We need to do something. People are getting burnt out. They can't just keep coming to those 2 o'clock in the morning calls or whatever they may be. We need to break it up somehow. It's getting to be too much. Because our calls used to be half an hour. Now they're an hour and a half. So we get up, go to the call, we have at least a good 2 hours. Now we go back to sleep. It doesn't happen right away, you know? So now we're up for 3-4 hours for that little bit. Everybody's going, I got work tomorrow, I got a big day tomorrow, I'm not going. Who's going? So it's come, you know, we need to do something, and I guess we're looking for a little bit of direction.
Yeah, you know, we're a growing community. We are growing. We're going to continue to grow. You know, and we know at some point we're going to have to talk about a staffed department, a fully staffed department like the city has. At some point we're going to get there with some of the developments that are being talked about right now, that we're working with right now, are going to increase activity in the township. I just look across the street. We've got 3 or 4 new buildings going up that are going to increase traffic. You know, the activity level is there. The call volume is there. Right now we're at about 80% EMS calls. Of our calls. So it's at this point, we're trying to determine at what point we really need, from a service standpoint, from a township resident and business standpoint, to provide additional services. The hospital is now, the new hospital is open. It's no longer on the north side of the town, the city. It's on the south side of the city, right on US 41. You know, so there's a lot of activity has moved this way.
Dave, I think you were first.
You had thrown out a 30-70 number there. Have you taken a look at what this changes at percentages? Does this change that percentage, or would it potentially change that percentage from 30-70?
Oh, God, definitely. Because definitely.
Have you taken a look at that as to what that percentage would be forecast to change to, and was that factored into the cost?
Well, I guess here's my answer to the way I would answer that is, if we were staffed between 5 o'clock and 9 o'clock, the rest of the on-calls would not be subject to those calls. So you wouldn't be running into the situation where they would be, they may respond at 2 o'clock in the morning, but they wouldn't be responding to the calls between 5 and 9 for back-to-back calling. So, I mean, has it been factored into these numbers? Not at this point. We haven't gone into that depth of it. Right now, we're just trying to see if the board wants us to continue to pursue the concept.
And I guess what the question that comes up is granted, you got a $0.5 mil or 1 mil, depending on whether you want to staff it on nights and the weekends. So let's just say you went for the whole thing and your staff, so you're looking at $1 million, you're saving some money there too.
Mm-hmm.
that has yet to be factored in, so I'm just wondering if that was factored in there, are you looking at a whole mill or a whole half a mill, or does
Well,
that change?
It will
This is-
probably change. Right now, we're just giving order of magnitude type numbers, you know, and we can, if the board is inclined to go in this direction, we can refine this down really much more finely for you for your next meeting.
Well, I personally
Right,
would
and
like to see
I understand that.
factored in, and
Yeah.
to see, do we really need the half a mil for the evenings and another half a mil for the weekends, or is there some offset in the cost that brings that millage number down?
Yeah, and that's something we've briefly have discussed, and the manager and I briefly discussed. We've talked it amongst ourselves, and just the manager and I briefly, about scheduling and how we can move people around and cover a lot more time. And maybe those people that work till midnight, they were the ones on call just for that night, when they worked that, you know, not having anybody and everybody maybe possibly show up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and it's just those people that maybe don't have a big day the next day that are showing up as much anymore, if I'm making sense.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted just to see those, that factored in there, to see if that percentage has changed, what effect it has, because
Percentage-
when you're looking at taking the special assessment from 2.5 to 3.5,
That's,
Sure.
that's a pretty healthy chunk.
It sure
And
is.
I think when you're looking at those numbers, you gotta go out and start doing a little survey of the residents, to make sure that that's the direction they wanna head in, because, and if you.
Oh, I understand.
If we can temper those numbers a little bit by a little further look into if that percentage has changed, then what's it bring the actual cost down? So it'd be nice to know that we didn't actually need a whole mill.
and
Yeah, and Dan and I have talked about
we've
that.
definitely,
Very-
yes, we understand. I
We've
do
gone around
understand.
we've gone around lots
The
of
1
bushes.
mill mark, it's just kind of like, oh my
I
God.
do understand.
Yeah, we've gone around lots of bushes about
I
what
live in the
might,
township, yeah.
you know, another 2 or 4 staff, what that might give us the ability to do on rotating schedules and you know,
Yeah.
things such as that. So, you know, we've
So I'd like
briefly
to see
talked
us move
about it.
ahead and research a little bit more, but I'd like to see some of that stuff in there. The
Yeah,
next
and this,
time we
like
come
you
back
said,
and talk about it.
this is preliminary.
Yeah.
This is a ballpark to see if we even want to consider it.
Right, that's what you're right.
And the other thing to think of too is the impact of the ambulance calls and the revenue we'd get from that. If you use even that 80% number to generate an income,
Right.
that would help too. I think
That's-
Pete was next. Sorry.
With,
I need buttons, I need lights.
yeah, the lights aren't here yet. What you said about, you know, fatigue and burnout and stuff like that, you know, that's so important.
Can you believe it?
That the people, if the people knew of what goes on, I'm very fortunate, I know several of them, and I've talked to different townships about it, because we're heading for a full-time somewhere along, not in my lifetime maybe, but I mean, when you live your life, especially we have younger people out there, they like to do this and do that, but, you know, a lot of them, though, I can't do this, I can't have a glass of wine, I can't do this because I'm on call or something like that, you know? And so if we can do something to make that a little bit easier, we're not gonna lose people.
Right.
Because it's awful, it's a hell of a commitment. Excuse
It's
my
a
French,
huge
but it's a big commitment that just think, if you're sitting down, you're gone. If you're in bed, you're out of bed. You know, and it just, I take my hat off to every one of them, you know, because it's, even to Dan down there, you know. No, I think it's very important that you try to figure this out and make it a little more easier on all the people.
On everybody.
call, and in some way, people will appreciate that.
Right,
Thank you.
no, we do have to do something. And it's a national trend. I mean, the fire service is having difficulties all over the country. Your volunteer especially. I mean, recruiting and retention is just, the numbers are down phenomenal.
Volunteering is
And we're
is
lucky
hard.
today, but we're trying to stay ahead of the game.
Yeah.
It's, they're burning them out. We're burning them out.
I know, Dan, but just like clubs and organizations, they're having a hard time.
Right,
Well,
understand.
this is the same way. You know, if you
Right.
start burning them out, you're gonna have problems. We won't
Yep.
have one.
No,
Thank you.
very, very
Thank
true.
you for what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot what I was gonna say. We've talked about this before, we've talked about having a work session. I would very much like to see a work session where we can hammer all this out at a work session, get the information that we need, and then bring it to the next board meeting for approval or disapproval. I'm in favor of it personally. I see it from
Okay.
both ends. Well, I see it, I see what Stan's talking about.
Well, I actually requested a work session, and the guys figured that they wanted to get preliminary numbers to us to see if we even wanted to go that far. Because we could maybe all say, no, we're not gonna look at this right now, and then they've wasted a lot of time, so.
Do you want a motion for a work session?
Well, and just one additional
Yeah,
comment.
sure.
Just one additional comment to make is that, Dan and I have also talked about, continuing you all know for the last 3 budget cycles, I proposed adding 2 service workers to the Public Works Department, and if we were to do that for that afternoon shift, they would also be firefighters, just like we have on the day shift. So, I mean, that's just what we've been talking about, basically, as much as how can we, and that would not increase the cost to the residents. How can we provide the level of service that we think we need to meet the need in the community without significantly increasing the costs is what we've been trying to work with. And how do we best utilize the really top-notch paid-on-call staff that we have and give them the opportunity for potentially full-time work at the same time. So it's worked really well on the day shift. I think everybody's really happy with the way it's working. There's nothing that we do in building and grounds that can't be set aside to respond, and that's basically the arrangement we have with the department. Now, Andrew and Amanda, when the siren goes off, so do they. They're gone. Same thing with Janelle in the office. They're gone. And that's just the way it is. So that's another option as well. If we're talking about possibly restructuring the Public Works Department from the standpoint of providing a second shift to cover some of the things that they just can't get to on the daytime with construction and everything else, my intention would be to have those be firefighters as well, firefighter EMTs, to be responders. So.
Hope they're not chalking the line when the bell goes off. End up with a half a line.
Yeah, but ball players know where the line is. That just makes the game interesting.
But knowing they're gonna be gone. They're gonna be gone if that bell rings.
That's right.
I don't know if you were first or John, Ernie.
Go ahead.
Just have a question. Reading through this, we've already been talking about weekend, and all of a sudden I look at this, now we're talking about evening. Are we talking about evening and weekend, or?
Yeah, there's a demand for both. Evenings up until 9 o'clock, we have a number of calls. You probably hear it, 6 o'clock, 5:30, 6:30, the siren goes off, 7 o'clock, the siren goes off. Once you get to around 9 o'clock and the traffic drops down and the business is closed, people are kind of going in for the evening, the calls drop off. But we do have the 2 o'clock in the morning calls, and we do have, crazy drivers at night that roll the cars over on US 41 and, on Grove Street. And those things happen, but they're not a regular occurrence. What is pretty regular is between 7:30 in the morning and around 9 o'clock at night, where we got a volume of calls.
Lots of Lost Creek last night, even midnight.
Well, the other
And
thing
that
that,
simple
quite
little call
frankly,
like that
was,
turns into 2.5 hours.
Well,
Now you gotta go home and get to sleep. So guys are saying, I'm just saying, it's burning people out. You do that a couple nights in a week, in a week, it's the guys are saying, I'm not going to this one.
and one other thing to bear in mind here is that we're seeing a trend, and for those of you that are listening on the scanners and things like that, you're seeing a trend where typically, and Dan and I talked about this just today, typically in the past where people weren't feeling good, they jump in the car and go to the ER. Well, now they don't do that anymore. They call the ambulance. Got a headache, got a nosebleed, whatever, so the ambulance gets dispatched. Well, you get 3 or 4 of those calls over the course of the day where you've left work or whatever, and then 2 o'clock you get a real call, like potential heart attack or things such as that, and now you're going to be gone for 2, 3, 4 hours. It's really hard on paid on-call folks. It really is. It's tough.
John?
First and foremost, the last thing we want the staff at the fire department to have to be dealing with a feisty fire chief.
Such a hard note.
That we need to eliminate, whatever it costs. I think that we need to always be constantly aware that any improvement we've made to the fire department service has been extremely well received and welcomed by the citizens of this community. I personally think we should, I agree that we should have a work session, but I say let's have a work session soon. And there's 3 of us coming in on Friday the 21st at 10 o'clock in the morning. We could have a work session that afternoon or that at noon and probably take care of whatever needs to be taken care of in prepping the township board for committing to one of these proposed improvements in fire service. I personally would rather that we get further ahead, find out what's needed, and add to it. We could clearly be in good shape 6 months or a year from now if we started to add 1 mil, or at least 3/4 of a mil. Now, I frankly think when I look at the community and what's going on and what we're inviting into the community in the way of industry and new business, and what we could welcome even more if we had more full-time fire department staff. It would give them a chance to get things organized and get them in a position to tell us what is it that they need absolutely. But I think having the work session, doing it soon, and sitting down and deciding what is it we could do to get ahead of the game. We don't have to be always following things. And I suggest that we have them, if we're going to have a work session, as has been suggested, we do it soon. I think the 21st is a good day to do it. And I think that we need to get off the dime and start looking forward to the one thing that we know is needed and will be welcomed in the community. I just think that we can be very careful about how we do it, and we can be very careful about how we spend the money. But I think we need to get off the dime and do something to respond to this soon.
So Dan, you were thinking maybe in the next week you could put more defined numbers together?
I have I think today, I pretty much in our report, I give you every number that I think would be applicable to this.
Except maybe for some of the...
Yeah, we can revise numbers.
Yeah. Some of the intangible numbers. Like
we can do some projections for you in terms of what that might mean, in terms of, like Dave was talking about with percentages, call
And to get to
percentages.
Dave's, I think Dave's answer was I would need, or we would need to put together some type of schedule to see what that would do, because we had discussed, and I go, if we get I can tell you within 0.1% what it'll affect, but without having and your commitment to it and trying to put a schedule together, I can give you very good numbers.
Yeah.
But are not gonna be maybe exactly what you're looking for.
What's
I'm making
convenient for
sense.
you? Dan wants to make a motion for a work session, so
I agree.
What-
Yeah, we can pull
what
something.
works for your schedule?
How long do you need?
We could do it for
I
Friday.
could, we're ready.
Yeah, we could
We're
do it
ready.
for Friday if you guys
Well,
want to do a work
Can't do
session
it at
Friday.
noon, I've got another meeting.
Let's do it at 1 o'clock then.
And Dave, if I'm not, yeah, maybe if we could talk, I'll give you a call, or if you don't mind, talk to you tomorrow,
Yeah,
just so I'm
all
clear on
all
exactly
I'm
what you're
talking
looking
about
for.
Is you mentioned the 30% and the 70% for the 30%
Call
for the
volumes.
staff and 70% for the on-call. And I'm just saying that if you staff it more, it's gonna change that to
Right.
maybe 40, 60.
Oh,
or
I see where
50,
you're coming.
And that alone changes the numbers.
It
So-
does.
But it's gonna, obviously would depend on the schedule, because we're not getting, all of our calls aren't, we're not getting 10, 10, 10, 10.
No, I
You know,
understand.
okay, so it's gonna, if I
General.
get a schedule, I can get it down to the 1/10%.
Yeah.
On what the
It's just a
the
matter
percentage would
of
be.
looking at that to see if does it actually come up to a mill, or does it something less than that?
That's, I think, will be better done in a work session,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I concur.
Well, and that ambulance income
Yeah, ambulance revenue.
difference too.
Yep, there-
That'll
yep.
have a- Even if you use that
Offset.
80% number, or 81 you said in your
Mm-hmm.
report,
And that-
that'd bring it down a little bit.
And we did not
it would
get
just
to
be
that
nice
level.
to see if when that's factored in, if that changes those numbers that we're looking for, whether it be a half a mill or a full mill. It'd just be nice to see if it has an impact on that.
Sure.
Understand, yep.
I've got another meeting at 1 on Friday, so I can't do it.
We have
Well,
Dan,
What about earlier?
Ernie, and Dave are coming at 10 o'clock Friday to get their computer orientation, 10 o'clock Friday morning. You could do like 11,
Yeah, I can do 11 fine.
if that works.
That'd be even better.
I didn't know I was coming at 10.
How you do?
No, you're not. Ernie, no, you don't have to, because you're not getting a computer. No, I said Dan, John, Pete, and Dave, the four.
Okay. Look at here, I didn't, nothing here.
Nope,
11 o'clock?
10 o'clock.
11 o'clock for the work session?
Oh.
you're doing computer at
Is
10.
that your motion, trustee
Yes,
Dan?
yes.
That's on the 21st, right?
Yep, Friday. Do we need
Yes,
support? Okay. Any other questions, comments?
Will that work for Dan?
Yeah.
Yes, we're ready, yes, we were just,
We are.
just doing a quick double check to make sure we weren't 100% committed to something.
The only thing that would interrupt that would be a call at 11 o'clock or 10:30.
Right.
Understood.
Yep.
Okay, we have a motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 11 o'clock, that gives you. Work session. Okay.
you.
Any other
Thanks.
questions for our guys? Good, thanks.
Thank you, we'll see you Friday.
For the hard work. Okay, consider election use agreement with St. Christopher's Church. Take it away, Randy.
Okay, about half a month ago, I got a letter from St. Christopher's Parish. They are gonna change their rental fees to $300 a day. I was paying $100, and even at $300 a day, it's still a pretty good deal for us for that use of that facility for the voting precinct. So I had to amend our existing contract to reflect that, and that's what I'm just looking for the board to authorize for me and the supervisor to sign that, send it to St. Christopher's, and go from there.
So moved. Second.
Any questions, comments?
And it doesn't, a comment, it doesn't lock the board into a long-term contract. It will automatically renew at 2 years after 2022 if nothing is changed, but it doesn't lock the board into a long-term contract.
Okay. Do you want a roll call since it's a contract?
No, it doesn't need one.
Then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Consider draft license agreement format for township property uses. It says Roger, so
Yeah, actually, Roger drafted a licensing agreement for us. As you know, we've had a number of groups that have been using township property for trails and other uses, basically, and they've been pretty much uncontrolled. And what we're trying to do is to put some controls on them so we have more ability to enforce operating requirements on the properties that we own and have liability for. So we had asked Roger to put together a draft licensing agreement, basically to right now specifically for NTN, because they are the largest user, but we also have the Ramba group, the mountain and snow bike groups are using it, and this licensing agreement would be a format basically that would serve the basis for licensing agreements with any group that wanted to utilize township property to set some restrictions on what they can and can't do with regards to cutting trees, placing trails, building bridges, all those kinds of things. So we have this before you as a first draft to take a look at to see if you have any issues with it. It has been reviewed by Planning and Zoning, by Superintendent of Public Works, and by myself, and we are comfortable with everything that's in it at this point. And it's before you as the property owner to see if you're interested in having these kinds of controls on your property.
Comments? I don't know if I like anybody cutting trees on our property. I don't care if it's 3 inches or not. I don't think they should be able to do anything to our property, at least without requesting and coming up with some kind of a plan, because most of those people are volunteers. So unless they have guidance or somebody telling them, they're going to say, well, you know, I think I want to make this trail a little bit bigger. I'm going to build it up here. I'm going to take this out.
I was just brushing it out.
Yeah, I don't think they should have carte blanche to, that's my 2 cents.
They don't. Are you saying you'd like it no inches there or smaller diameter?
No, that if they're going to change the contour, this is, in my mind, it's more like a use agreement. And if they're going to change something, they need to ask permission.
Roger?
Yes, sir.
That's in there. They have to come up with a plan before they make a new trail. You have some existing trails there. Number 6, for example, says they have to identify and mark the location of any and all existing trails and so forth, but they are supposed to, under this, shall not proceed with any work of any kind or nature whatsoever except for designating the proposed trail route without advance written approval. So they have to obtain advance written approval for the location and what they're going to do before they turn a shovel full of dirt. This particular agreement is strictly a rough draft form, but it's compiled by utilizing other agreements that several of us have obtained from various other property owners as a template or a sample. We've added a great number of things. All of the things dealing with the gasoline in the wellhead area were Kirk's additions because it relates to the DEQ environmental issues of what can be done in the wellhead area. For example, we have one well that has residential areas in it, and they can't even have lawnmower gas in their storage shed if they live within that vicinity. So that's the 1 to 2 gallon gasoline if they're going to use an excavator type of thing. But the idea is that they need to come to the township with a plan, and then once the trail is approved, it's to be placed on a GIS system so that we know where the trails are and they aren't being moved or migrating or new trails showing up. That's part of the problem traditionally that has occurred over the years.
Which is why that shouldn't even be in there, that they can infer cutting trees, period.
Well, certainly that can be changed. I mean, basically, you know, that language can simply say there'll be no standing timber or trees cut without township approval. But we're talking, in a lot of cases, we're talking trails that are 2, 3, possibly as much as 4 feet wide, so there will be some trees. But certainly we can have the ability, or put the ability in here that we would have to flag trees that were okay to be removed. they would not be making that decision. I mean, that's an easy modification. And as I say, this is a draft for your first review to see how you feel about it.
For example, I've seen other ones that allow cutting up to 6 inches.
Yeah.
So this is a proposal for you to look at. Another one that's almost arbitrary is the width of the trail. We indicate that it's not to exceed 48 inches or 4 feet. I had suggestions all over the board on what is a modest, moderate trail width, and I basically took the mean of those mathematically to put a number in a proposal for you to look at. There's nothing in here that you should consider is mandatory, including the whole concept of having a license agreement. Now, some parties also have easement agreements which are considerably different than a license agreement. An easement grants the right to utilize the property and runs with the land traditionally and is easily assignable by one user to another user. A license is generally quite specific to the grantee, the party whose permission is being it's given to, and a license is revocable at the will of either party. So in other words, if we have this in place for a year and we decide that it's completely unsatisfactory, there's nothing binding that would require a renewal of it or nothing preventing the immediate termination of it. Well, I guess we put something in that.
And we do have in there.
In fairness, we would have a 30-day notification period because certain type of work would probably have to be done to terminate it. But that's all of these provisions are subject to a discussion revision. It's designed to be a template or a sample to look at for discussion.
So there would be nothing wrong with moving this to your next meeting to give you 2 weeks to review it and see if you have any potential changes.
Any questions down here?
No problem.
Can't see.
So that would be the only action necessary would be to carry it to your next meeting.
You want to do that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
So move, we'll move this
Second.
agenda item to the next meeting.
Second.
Okay,
That'd be
all in
July
favor?
2nd.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Opposed?
Be here.
Okay. Thanks.
I'm in favor of it.
Schedule work session to discuss future recruitment. I've had a couple board members ask me, now that we've pretty much gotten through the superintendent issue with how that's gonna play out with replacement, what happens with Randy's? And if you remember, he hasn't said what his plan is, his contract, we have to be notified by September if he's going to ask for an extension or not to come back or whatever in his December termination date for this contract. So how that process happens is what the board members have asked we discuss. Doesn't have to be today or tomorrow, but I was asked to put it on here, so I did, Dave.
I just think we need to set a work session and get going with the policy setting, because regardless of what the manager chooses to do or what the board chooses to do, we still need something in
Need that in
place.
there.
And I think because we're already in this mindset, it's not a bad time to do it. Randy?
Inopportune times. Well, not to create any suspense, but, you know, you don't have to wait till September. I'm going to be asking you to extend my contract through May of 2020, 6 months, basically. And the reason for that is that we have filled the superintendent's position. We've made an offer, it's been accepted. John Kangos will be joining us as superintendent as September 16th. My intent is to, he will be starting to work with Kirk, so he'll have half of September, October, November, and December to work with Kirk through the budget process and to basically continue whatever reorganization of the department that as superintendent he would see fit. And then I would work with him. I had agreed that I would work with him through May, basically for a full transition to give you almost a year, basically to determine how and when and who you would be looking for to replace me. So that's kind of where you're at. The majority of what your decision process needs to be is how wide of a net do you want to cast, basically, in terms of recruitment. I don't, personal opinion, if I were in your seat, I would not be looking to go outside of the Great Lakes region for recruiting. Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, Ohio, that area. The reason I say that is because history has shown me that when you go outside of that area and bring somebody into Marquette, there's generally issues, and the issues are usually weather-related, and it's usually spousal. More than once I've hired an administrative position that moved to Marquette and was here for 3 months, and their spouse, either way, just couldn't handle the winter, didn't like the location, didn't want to be that far away from a big city, any number of things. So if you look in the geographic region, the Great Lakes geographic region, I think there's ample potential candidates there. They might even be local. So I wouldn't go on a full-blown national recruitment. It's going to cost you a ton of money. You do have $25,000 in your budget right now, 2019, for recruitment activity that you will not be spending because we didn't go outside of the area other than newspaper advertising for the superintendent's position.
Well, that can be part of the work session discussion too. John?
I agree with the what's being said. I also think that it's possible that you could even limit it to the Upper Peninsula. You could, initially, just to see
Yes,
what you get.
we can talk about that.
And the Upper Peninsula townships are unique. They're unique in many ways. The townships in the state of Michigan are unique. And how they've been treated by the state, without further comment, I'll just say that's been unusual, and it takes time to get acclimated to that treatment. And I think that impacts the operation and day-to-day operation of a number of our employees. So when you're talking about, let's take a look at where we need to limit our search at the beginning. I frankly would suggest give a lot of consideration on the board. It's going to be a board decision, but I think a lot of consideration should be given to initially limiting it to the Upper Peninsula.
So the question is scheduling a work session. That's what we want to try to do right now. Can you look at your calendars?
You do have a little time.
You want to do something next week to bring it to the next board meeting? Do you want to wait till July?
Can we do it before July?
July?
2nd?
Before July?
That's 2 weeks.
I think we could do it in the middle of
I have a question.
July.
What is it that we're going to want to accomplish at this work session?
Decide what span you're going to do it.
Well, I think
Well,
what you're
that's
going to
really-
what you're going to want to discuss is what process are you going to follow and when are you going to follow it? What are you going to do? I mean, how is it? Are you going to use an outside resource? Are you going to have recruitment done in-house? I mean, those are the kinds of things that you need to decide.
Process.
Are you going to simply follow the existing recruitment process but have the board be in place of manager? Are you going to hire the MML or somebody else to do the recruitment for you and bring you, do everything and bring you 3 or 5 candidates. Those are the kinds of things you need to decide at this point.
I don't know if all 7 of us want to start interviewing people.
No,
No.
no, no.
It's
Not
quite a,
gonna work
quite a
out.
process, going through applications and. so
Well,
we
from a
need to
legal
figure out the
standpoint, you don't
process.
want to
You
do
can't,
that.
no, no.
I was pushing it on the other extreme.
Yeah.
So, time,
Which week are we in?
whatever the.
I'd like to
You
see
got-
it
you
move
got-
into July anyhow.
Okay,
I mean, this isn't something that we need
No.
to do.
but if we forget, it's gonna be
Well, I-
October. know, if we
You
don't
need
do
to
it.
allow yourself about 6 months for the whole process.
Can we work possibly in the week of the 24th? Any chances of that?
24th
June.
of what month?
Of June,
June,
just to get started.
Next week.
Tuesday looks fine
I-
for me.
What week, when is it?
Tuesday, the 24th.
Next week?
Of July or June?
June.
Any day's good for me as long as it's in the
Isn't we,
Tuesday won't work for me, no.
Okay, what works for you then?
Monday would be better, but,
What day?
but we can do this in July too. I mean, I think instead of.
I think
I
Pete's
think in
gonna be
July you start
tight.
running into people being gone.
Yeah.
Or, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday at 3 I'm available, or after 3.
Friday I could do, I've got 2 things, Wednesday and Thursday.
Friday, what? day?
Friday, the 28th. And Dave's looking for a 1 to 3 timeframe.
I can work around that
On Friday, or just in general?
in general.
I mean, I don't have to be here either, so
Yeah,
don't,
we all need to be here.
I don't.
Yes. We need your input.
so, what, I'm missing,
We haven't decided.
talking
yet.
about the 28th
Does the 28th
As a-
work
as
for
a-
everybody?
as a date of question.
Dan, how is that for you?
He has it open.
With what's going
Friday
on in
the
my life,
28th.
Lynn, I can't commit to anything
Jungle?
right now, yeah.
I
Vote
hear
for
you.
Dave, 28.
You write it
work
down,
for
if you show up, you're.
28th,
That's all I
Friday.
can do.
Something or
3 to 4.
Um,
3 to 4:30, the office closes at 4:30, so.
How's that?
So at 3.
Friday, the 28th, at 3 o'clock?
All right?
That works.
Perfect.
I'll move week's schedule a work session on Friday, the 28th of June at 3 o'clock.
All right, and I will get you some information with several options.
3 o'clock.
2 o'clock?
3.
3 o'clock.
3.
And I'll be a little bit late, not maybe 3:10, but
Okay. Does that work?
I need a
Second?
support. I need
you.
a support.
If you're not gonna show up, we may as well have it at 1.
No, I'll be here. It'll just be a little
Give you a
late.
police escort.
Do I have a second?
I'll
Yes,
second.
33rd it.
Okay.
I think the biggest thing is, once you do that, really, we aren't gonna be doing a lot for another 3, 4 months.
Right.
on that
Okay,
Point in time, so,
Preliminaries.
preliminary at this point in time.
See, if you decide to do your own recruitment, you're gonna have to allow yourself a month or so to get into professional journals and things such as that with an
We're not
ad.
gonna do our own recruitment. I know what that's all about. I've done that.
I meant the township, if you're not gonna hire a headhunter, for instance, if you're gonna do your own ads and things like that, you gotta allow yourself about a month to get those ads published and responses back.
I know
that's Friday, the 28th,
3 o'clock.
quite a ways away. I
This is
think that
June.
it would be,
June,
that. No, this is June,
couple
June.
weeks.
June.
Next week.
Week from Friday.
week from Friday.
I got it.
Okay.
That's still quite a ways away.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is far enough away that I think that it would be good to have a sheet to work off of with the options as they are seen by the manager.
Yep, he said he'd provide that.
Well, I wanted to make damn sure that was coming,
Okay.
because we could spin our wheels for a while with people talking about it. If you had the options in front of you, we can get to pick them pretty quick.
Okay. All in favor?
All right.
Aye. Opposed?
2 work sessions.
Thank you.
Okay?
We got 2 work sessions. All right.
And
Sir?
It'd be nice if at that work session, there's already a policy in place that we're probably just gonna add to. And if we had that along with all the other information.
That'll be part of it. That'll be one of the options.
Sounds good. Action for marijuana work session. That's what I wrote down.
Action
From, yes,
From the work session.
from the work session.
I move to,
You're gonna beat me to it.
yeah, I move to direct the planning commission to develop a marijuana ordinance. I think it was, help me with that, Dave.
Well, they're really not gonna develop a marijuana ordinance, they're gonna address.
Research.
Or address, I guess, address and research the
They're
ordinance.
gonna address text amendments within the zoning ordinance to accommodate recreational and medical marijuana.
Support.
What gets done there is, once they've addressed it through the zoning ordinance, it comes back to the board to develop the actual ordinance that allows it or doesn't allow it.
So the planning commission will do the research and will look for, in the zoning ordinances as they are now, what'll happen to accommodate that, correct?
Yeah, everything I've looked at so far says that before you consider an ordinance to opt in on any portion of medical or recreational marijuana is, you want to have the zoning ordinances in place to accommodate it, and then it's the board action, if I'm correct, Roger, that actually opts in to whatever portion they elect to opt into.
So you're actually going to be asking the planning commission to review the current zoning ordinance and propose amendments to comply with the with the potential ordinance.
And there's a lot of them out there right now.
We discussed this at the last meeting, and the motion was made to have the planning commission and the staff to work on this issue and come back to us.
No,
Well,
correct.
it was at the work session and we had consensus. That's why it's on this agenda, or it should have been on this agenda.
This is my recollection. We scheduled a work session after that discussion, and then in the work session, we kind of came to a consensus that this is what we're gonna do. And of course, you can't have a motion at a work session, so.
Okay, you're right.
Yeah,
You're
so
right, but the discussion we had.
you're
was
correct.
To have both the planning commission and the staff, and I think that's important that you don't delete that part of it.
Well, the planner and the zoning administrator are part of the commission
That's,
work.
that's all right, I just don't want it to be the planning commission itself, which is made up of one elected member and 4 people who are appointed. I would like it to include formally the staff.
That's fine.
Okay.
So not to muddy the water, but I'll get the questions from planning and zoning. They should, the planning commission should look at pro and con potential changes
Yeah,
for the
everything.
board to consider.
Yeah, because Roger'd have to look at them anyway.
Okay.
Well, and Roger, you can go along with this too if you want. The whole process, the way it goes is the planning commission develops an ordinance and they work it back and forth and they nickel and dime it to death for the better part of a year. And then when we get all done and we think we got something that we like, we send it over to legal and legal picks it apart and we come back and we look at it again. And that's just normally the process and then you have public hearings on it. So by the time it gets back to the board with a proposal, it's been through considerable deliberation and legal will already have been looked at it and public hearings will already have been held on it before it ever gets back to the board to, I mean, obviously there's the updates along the way that you get every meeting anyway, but before the board gets a second bite at it, take a look at if they really want to do it or not.
Roger?
I had actually begun in anticipation of this, putting together just a few bullet points that can be used for the planning commission to consider on options and things that they, whatever route they wish to go, should look at least. I didn't see it on this agenda, so I didn't bring any of that with me, and it's not completed yet anyway, but that's something that's a work in progress. So maybe we can help expedite the process a little bit by having a little bit of legal input to the Planning Commission sooner rather than later on this one.
And maybe that means you attending one of their meetings or something too, since you have started. Because as soon as we finished the work session, I called you and told you that was the consensus and to be thinking about it. So that might not hurt. You can coordinate with them if you think that's necessary to save a little time in the formulation process. Did we get a second?
Yes, we did.
Are we good?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Public comment. We still have public. Want to share anything with us?
Thank you for moving forward with this in any manner. You know, it's I recently was appointed to Director of Cannabis Development for our tribe, so I'm no longer Director of Cultural Resources, which is very good around this time because we got powwow right around the corner, and that's a lot of work. But I thought I was going to be getting out of a lot of work, but I'm actually getting into a lot more work. So we're in the middle of facilitating purchases, agreements with licensees, and now, you know, with the township moving forward, hopefully we can do something to develop the Marquette property a little better. Thank you for listening and moving forward with it.
I'm glad you were here because that reminded us that it needed to be on there. I'm sorry we missed it.
That was the whole, Joe Rocha said you might want to send your attorney down there to just be present. And after my appointment, I talked to the attorney. I said, well, I think maybe I should go in. Oh, he was in full concurrence with that. So here I am.
Especially you're not paying him.
Yeah, I've been on the clock since 8 this morning, so these are long days and a lot of work ahead of us. So if there's any help with the zoning commission, I would definitely be willing to help. I know there's no sense in reinventing the wheel. There is a lot of townships that opted in on this, so some information was provided that maybe you can hand to Mr. Zappa, and he can hand over to the board or the commission, the zoning commission, and they can look at it as well.
Okay. Thanks for that sharing.
Thanks for waiting.
Oh,
yeah.
That's only a half a day. It's only a half a day. It's only 12, 13 hours.
Any announcements? Anybody wants to share anything?
I guess the only thing is Lois is starting to put together the absentee ballots. They should be getting sent out in the mail shortly. If for any of you that sent your applications back in, you should be getting a ballot probably within the next few weeks. If you don't send your application back in, you will not get a ballot. And some people might choose to do that with what's on the ballot. There's only one thing, so.
Anything else?
I got one question since Randy brought that up. Could we not have one precinct on this election since it's such a small election? And just
I thought of that, but the confusion factor, anytime you change something, it's mass confusion. So, yeah, I don't want to, I mean, it would have been easily just to have probably one precinct, but I don't want to change things because confusion. The next, we had 3 elections next year. You'll have people showing up here. They won't understand what happened. So that's why we're doing it this way.
It's a good question, though, really. I didn't know you could do that. I thought it was stuck.
People are creatures of habit. You know, it just, you break that habit, you'll get more phone calls next time. Okay, where is it going?
And you'd have to notify everybody, for sure. Because you couldn't just put it in the paper or something, you'd have to mail out something to everybody. And then they wouldn't know what to do next time. So.
Yeah, just the confusion, Dan. I mean, some places, like some small townships, most of them only have one precinct, but Like I said, we could have put it in one, but I don't want to confuse people. That's the last thing.
I just thought the cost savings, and not that it's gonna be a lot, but
No, actually, the cost wouldn't be that
Nothing
much
more cost.
difference because it would be minimal.
yeah.
It's not
Okay.
worth it.
Anything else announcement-wise? How about the manager's report? Anything,
Oh,
questions for the manager? or-
Just a couple of things, and I won't be long. Pete already mentioned, we had our car show last Saturday. Came off really well. My last count, there were 97 cars, but then afterwards, at least another dozen or so came a little bit later. We had a lot of variety. People had a great time. I heard lots of really positive comments. We had people that bypassed the Bridge Fest up in Houghton and came here instead with their cars from Calumet, Houghton, Hancock area, Laurium, and one from Laurium, which I thought was pretty interesting. Had a couple that came from Escanaba and Gladstone. So, you know, it's drawing the folks in. Super One did a tremendous job in terms of providing food for everybody. They were there from 10 until 2, cooking brats and hot dogs, and everybody had a great time. The next one coming up is August 3rd, which is our Community Day at Lions Field. We're well on the way to planning that. You know, just like last year, we'll have the inflatables for the kids. We've got bands lined up, food vendors will be lined up. Super One is going to be there all day and through the night. They'll be there for the entire event, providing food for the folks there. So that should be a great time. Everybody knows we have our laptops and tablets came in. We've got Friday at 10 o'clock. The trustees will be coming in to get oriented on the laptops, and at 11 o'clock we'll have the work session for the fire department. The County Road 492 speed study came back. Not surprisingly, it reflected that people on average are driving between 60 and 62 miles an hour through there. The Road Commission and the State Police take the position that that is the speed at which most traffic feels comfortable on that road, and they are not inclined to reduce the speed limit, as residents had requested. Trustee Wiegand mentioned the National Trails Day on June 22nd. That is the same time frame where we have the softball tournament going on, the girls' youth softball. I have worked with Mike Springer on that, so we'll minimize the impact on each on each of the events. They're going to set theirs. Mike is going to set their stuff up on the ice rink, so they'll be separated from the kiddie park and the ball field, which is where most of the other activity will be taking place. We did have an incident at Lions Field warming building, at the ice rink warming building, where the waste line was blocked by stones and pine cones. We've reviewed the tape and can't find anybody on the tape that caused that issue. We're not sure if it's something that's occurred over time or what at this point, but I've watched the tape twice, and I can't identify anybody that's gone in there and done anything. It was mainly parents and kids that would use the restroom. There was one group of 5 young men that were there for a couple of hours, in and out of the building, but nobody really did anything untoward or carried anything in there. So we're kind of at a loss. We're still investigating it and going further back on the tape. But it wasn't immediate right before the blockage, so.
Are the cameras positioned in the best spot? Okay.
Yeah, we've got, well, we have 2 interior cameras that cover the whole, the whole area, plus outside cameras, and so I was watching them, and there wasn't anything that they were doing that would have caused any kind of suspicion. So it was one of those events. It was an expensive fix. We had to rent some equipment, and we had 3 staff members that spent 12 hours working on it each, 36 hours of labor, and I think 1 trustee.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much time trustee put in.
Turn my bill in.
But again, we're still trying to figure out how that occurred and how it could be prevented in the future, and I don't know that there's a way that you could prevent it. But at any event, nothing showed up on the tape. So other than that, I didn't have anything else to add, unless you have board members have any questions.
Questions for the manager? Okay. Randy, how about reviewing the motions?
Okay, consent agenda was passed with no changes. The regular agenda was approved with a few changes. We added one item and moved a few. Third motion of the night was to disband the ad hoc committee of the board that we assigned to for recruitment. Fourth motion of the night was to approve the professional engineering services of Stantec for the sewer system GIS. Fifth motion of the night was to approve the second reading of the Well Roads parcel zoning map amendment. Sixth motion was to schedule a work session on Friday, June 21st at 11 to the purpose of fire rescue staffed coverage. Seventh motion of the evening was to approve the election agreement with St. Christopher's Parish. And that'll have an absent because Trustee Everson was out of the room at the time, so you're listed as absent on that motion. But it was approved.
Duty calls.
Yeah, and eighth motion of the night was to move the draft license agreement format for township property to the next meeting. Ninth motion of the night was to schedule a work session at 3 o'clock on June 28th for future recruitment. That's it.
Okay,
The
thanks.
motion that moved that to the planning commission.
Oh, yeah, and that's the 10th motion, excuse me. The 10th motion of the night was to direct the planning commission to the review of the zoning amendments for the accommodation of recreational and medical marijuana.
And staff.
Yeah, and staff.
So the only thing for right now that we have is moving the discussion of the license agreement to the next agenda. That's the only thing I picked up on. Any board member comments? Anybody, Pete?
We're still on D.
If you want, yeah.
Yeah.
Want?
Well, sure. What's up?
I was wondering what the plans are for the
Budget definition.
budget definitions, funding levels, and CIP requests.
What's the scoop, Randy? Did we hear anything from the accountants, auditors?
I haven't received their report as yet.
Can you rattle their cage?
Yep, it's due.
At the end of
This week.
June, right? Oh, yeah.
It's due in June.
Yeah.
Due this week.
And they were gonna include something with that.
Draft is due to Lois this week.
Okay, I'll put a question mark on here and see if we've got something.
And CIP request also. Because I believe Trustee Wiegand wanted that handled before budget started.
Sure be nice, wouldn't it?
No comment.
Okay. So you don't have any board member comment? Oh, you do? Okay.
I do have to give a shout out to two of our personnel that are in grounds, to Amanda Arbelius and Jim Martin for an outstanding job that they do month after month up at the garbage drop-off site. They go out of their way to help residents for however long they're there. If it's 6, 7, 8 hours, smiles on their faces. And I had my neighbor came up and said, you have got to give that girl Amanda a $2 an hour raise. She works
You didn't
her
have to say that
butt
out
off. But they both do. Jim and Amanda are fantastic. They, never a problem. They go out of their way to help people out, and it's, have to give a shout out to them.
Great. Go ahead, John.
The direction was for him to give somebody $2.
Yeah, I thought I heard
That
that.
sounds better.
Yeah, we got it.
Sounds like a public mandate.
Anything else? Yes, Pete?
I just want to mention that, watch when you're driving out here now, they're starting making some changes out here in the speed zone. It's 40 miles an hour, even though I think a lot of people can't read that. Because, just be careful, because they're going more than 40 miles an hour. It's just terrible. Also, The 4th of July is coming up soon, and we also have a fireworks ordinance, the noise ordinance, and the officers will be out there trying to take care of that. And also, again, this Saturday, 10 o'clock, the township cleanup. We'd like to see more residents there to help us out. Thank you.
Anything else?
I may immediately follow.
There you go.
Not gonna tell them that, tell them
You
what.
have support?
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. 9:07.